Hey everybody, I'm Zack Dugow. I'm here for another episode of thUp. In this episode, we're going to be covering local lift and how locally tailored digital marketing solutions for franchises and multi-location brands and how we can improve that for those brands. And with us today, we have Doug Zarkin, Chief Brand Officer of Good Feet Worldwide and author of Moving Your Brand Out of the Friend Zone, which I really loved. Thank you for being here with us today, Doug.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Good to see you.
Good to see you. So actually, maybe we could start because you launched this book last year. It was really, really exciting. Maybe you could tell me a little bit about, and first give our audience a little bit of a background on yourself, and then tell us a little about what inspired you to write the book.
Sure. For the better part of my career, I've been on this journey of moving my way from the back of the communications train to the front, really wanting to understand how to build brands and drive brand growth. I started out in the agency world, worked pretty much every function within the agency world, started the youth and entertainment division of Gray Advertising, and then went to the dark side of the force, otherwise known as the client side. You're talking to one of the few guys that was an Avon lady. I worked at Victoria's Secret for a while. I spent a number of years in the fashion industry, and then 11 years as the CMO of Pearl Vision at SOL Exotica before joining Good Feet Worldwide as their first chief brand officer in October of last year. I joined the company the same week that I launched my first and probably only book, Moving Your Brand Out of the Friend Zone, a modern day guide to strengthening your brand's value equation. So it's still pretty new and still pretty raw in the sense that you write something like that, you're putting out your beliefs, you're putting out your thought system, and it becomes subject to interpretation and review. And I've been fortunate that people that have read it have enjoyed it. But it definitely is one of the more terrifyingly exciting things I've ever done.
Yeah. If there's one, and I think it was really well written. I think a lot of times when people who aren't writers write books, they're not well written. I was just going to ask you, did you have like help and support? Did you write this mainly? Like I know you credited some people, but was there any kind of ghostwriter? This was really your own
No,
words.
no, no. I mean, I what I did is I worked with a publisher who helped me. The first thing we did is we did about 25 hours worth of audio interviews.
Okay.
Where after I kind of I had the title in mind before I started writing, and I wrote the outline for the book in about 15 minutes.
Got it.
What then came was, what did every chapter narrative say and how did it build on each other? And so we would do an interview and they would transcribe the interview and kind of put it into chapter form. And then I would just rewrite and rewrite and rewrite. And, when people say, how did you spend your summer? I spent last summer really creating this 16 weeks to
Sure.
go from outline to ready to be published. And I wanted to do it simply because I love to teach. I love to at least try to inspire, to try to bring the best out of people. I've been fortunate that I've had the chance to teach at Ivy League institutions and as well as my daughter's high school. And I love the look on someone's face when you break through and you help them to see something that they haven't. And so this book is really designed to hopefully provide learning opportunities. It's called a guide, not a manual, because a guide is a journey. And as the leader of that guide, it's still about you engaging in the path. Sometimes your guide will take you the fastest route, sometimes your guide will take you on a more scenic tour, but you as a participant have a right to determine what that trip is, what that venture is, what that direction is. And so this is by no means an instruction manual. It is meant to give anchors to help someone shape their thinking and maybe question as they're going through it, what do I really need to be focusing on? What's really important? What's really meaningful?
Got it. Wow, that's really helpful. And not to put you too much on the spot, but if you had one main takeaway there, and there's a lot from the book for everybody listening here, but if there was one that like, which takeaway are you most excited about if you wanted to leave people for like a little bit of a teaser on that front?
Yeah. My version of, the theory of relativity or the Pythagorean theorem is what I call the brand value equation. And whether you're making 50,000, 500,000, or $5 million, everybody is looking for brand value from what they buy and the services they take advantage of. The formula for me is brand value equals experience as your numerator divided by your price as your denominator. If you deliver an amazing experience, you can charge a premium price and have a positive brand value equation. And the whole idea of brand love versus the friend zone is predicated on understanding how does your value equation play out.
Got it. So please, everybody, go out there, check it out. Doug Zarkin, moving your brand out of the friend zone. And so kind of moving to more kind of present day and what you're seeing on the ground here with Good Feet Worldwide. What are you seeing as some of the new trends and solutions in 2024? What are some things that you feel like franchisors should be thinking about and paying
Yeah.
attention to? The space is dynamic. You know it better than anybody. What would be like some key call outs there?
So I think 24 is going to be the cluster of all clusters. And you can fill in what the second part of that statement is, because you have a year of an unprecedented amount of election action, not necessarily the presidential election, which will be in a couple key states. You'll see the usual drama, but mayoral, Senate races, um, local propositions for whether it's investments, whether for change, as states start voting on, the impact of Roe v. Wade and what it does, there's so much energy at the local level now for that type of activity, that as brands that are franchise brands that are living in the world of local, they're going to have to pivot. They're going to have to think through, how do I capture eyeballs and break through the noise? And it may require them to modify their strategies a bit. You know, it's great. I love local TV. I'm a huge, huge proponent of it. There's nothing to me that speaks to being a brand in the neighborhood than appearing on your local morning and evening news. But that is also where all of these local propositions and amendments that get voted on are also going to be. And so you're going to get preempted. And so how do you still connect locally, but at the same time find yourself where you can actually have inventory? So dealing with that's going to be a big strategic change.
Do you think on the local level for brands who have been nervous about it, they should do like a dip your toe in, very gray, very this? Do you suggest that, or do you think it's like, would you advise them to do more of a like, no, you need to be bold, right? So we've seen brands misstep with their audiences, and we've seen some of them hit it out of the park with their audiences. For franchisers who are new to this, do you suggest kind of be strategic and be bold, or do you kind of suggest more like a dip your toe in approach?
Look, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So I don't think it's an all or nothing. I think you have to respect the marketplace and accommodate the changes in that, or you're going to get left behind. So there's going to need to be a migration of some things. It's not do do this, not this. It's maybe do less of this and do a little bit more of that. Whether that's how you treat the notion of, do you take TV and evolve it into video? And that shifts where you place your media and how you think about what you're doing. Do you take traditional radio and move it to an audio platform? Again, it's the same message, it's just served up in a little bit of a different medium. So there's definitely things that can be done to modify your strategy without losing what got you to where you are.
Okay. Okay. And so to that, on the local media side, how important do you feel like is transparency in terms of tricks, media, otherwise to success here for franchisers?
It's huge. I think especially in the digital space, I sit in way too many meetings where it's so jargon laden, and it's, the algorithm hasn't had time to optimize and blah 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 blah. It You lose faith very quickly when somebody has to over explain something. If it takes you 3 pages to explain a single number, then the chances are that number is not a good number, in my opinion. Um, there is specificity in understanding certain things that require a certain explanation. And you have to be comfortable with embracing a degree of ambiguity in the world of digital. PMAX as a medium isn't going to tell you what within PMAX is optimizing. It's just going to tell you that PMAX as a whole delivered great results, which is frustrating because they promise transparency and they don't really give it. So those are things where frankly you have to get comfortable with that degree of uncomfortableness, but it shouldn't permeate everything that you're doing.
Hmm. Okay, that makes sense. Is there a specific time or instance where there was a digital marketing solution or a campaign that comes to mind, that you'd call out for our audience, things that went well, things you do differently, I guess, a way that our audience could learn from your experience on this front of like, what are some of the metrics or KPIs you've paid attention to or campaign where like, wow, that this part went really well and this went really wrong. I think a lot of the audiences we talk to or I speak to sometimes don't even know what they're thinking about or looking at times. They hear
Yeah.
the in language, they sit in the meeting, they nod their head, they're like, that sounds good. What are you thinking about or looking for to kind of cut through that and be like, now this is what's important to me, or any kind of example for the audience you think would be helpful?
Yeah, I mean, I what I would say is in my past life in particular, and in my current life emerging, is this focus on using digital to drive appointments. Um, for Good Feet, for the Good Feet store, it's about, appointments for that fitting. At Pearl, it was eye exams, so appointments. And how you use certain mediums to deliver that appointment volume. We actually found that, in the case of like YouTube for engagement was delivering stronger results than YouTube for action, as an example. So like the performance aspect of that particular medium wasn't performing as well as the focus on impressions, which was leading to more actions. I think trying to get clear on each layer of the marketing cake, which is something I talk about in the book, what success looks like. What I don't appreciate is when everything becomes impressions,
Right.
because to me that's not a necessarily a core KPI for every element that you're doing. So you as a marketer have to figure out within each channel how hard is it going to deliver lower funnel or actual lift, and that's where you got to probe.
Yeah.
If it's upper funnel, appreciate it. Like, don't show me, I don't care that my video completion rate on streaming is 98%. If they can't skip it, if by a proxy of the medium, it's non-skippable, I don't care that it's 97, 98%. That's not something to be impressed about.
Right. You want to see the attribution of that. You want to see, how did this drive in-store sales? Seems like, shameless plug. We have a CTV attribution producting team as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's important. That makes that's great to hear. I think a lot of times people who are only care about impression serving either don't really understand their business, right? Or they
Right.
don't, yeah, they don't understand their business. They're missing something. Being somebody, Doug, who's sat on both sides of the aisle in terms of agency and in-house at a brand, how do you see those relationships evolving? Like, are you somebody who sees agencies still being in place 10, 15 years from now, big
Yeah.
agencies, and
I
that
do.
yeah,
I do, because I think brands can get brands can drink their own Kool-Aid way too much and believe too much in things that maybe don't translate enough to what the consumer, the WIFM for the consumer has to be clear. And you may believe that you're delivering something of value to the consumer, but the consumer may not. And that's the road to finding yourself in the friend zone with your audience, is when your understanding of them and where your situation is with them does not mirror reality. Um, I enjoy working with outside agencies because they have the benefit of working with other clients, and there are lessons that are learned that can help to make me smarter. I don't claim to be a master of everything. Somebody who's a master of everything is actually a master of nothing. I know where my strengths are, and I need to surround myself with people that can take my weaknesses and build a core skill set to make not necessarily those weaknesses, but opportunities for me to learn further.
yeah. So right now, just taking kind of back to the franchise world, is there any specific challenges that you think, and especially in the face of local marketing, aside from like also what you're seeing as the opportunity on the political side, or any specialized expertise that you feel like franchises and franchisors really need to be paying attention to, um, on the digital front this year, next
Yeah,
year, things that you're not.
yeah. I think one of the best and worst things to happen at the local level are NIL deals. Um, everybody wants one, but very few need, and even fewer are really good. To me, an NIL deal is only worth the money that you're investing if it's authentic, number one. And I think equally important, you don't bring somebody on so that you can build them up. You bring somebody on because they have already established, in my opinion, a strong relationship with the audience in which you're looking to reach. Because if you're spending $50,000 on an NIL deal and then you have to spend an additional $250,000 to promote it, your path to generating revenue positive is a lot greater. If you're spending $50,000 on an NIL deal and they have incredibly strong social following, your ability to recoup your investment is a lot quicker because you've already gained the access. The exception to that is if you are lucky enough to find somebody who has just a remarkable story.
Yeah.
And you have to go into that situation with real eyes wide open, that it's not the NIL deal itself that is going to reap benefits for you. It's what you do with that person or personality that's going to reach it. And so you have to go in knowing that, all right, I'm spending 30 grand on this person. I have to factor in that my budget for this is not 30, but maybe it's 130. So it just draws out your ability to be net neutral or net positive because you're not spending 30,000, you're spending 30,000 plus all the cost of the media with it. That's something that I think franchisees in general are facing now they didn't face 10 years ago.
Yeah. Um, and so, Doug, one thing that started on the time that we've worked together with Ballyhoo and your time at Pearl is how well you kind of coached and mentored a lot of the marketers and people on your team. What advice for people who are incoming and growing, especially in the franchise space or multi-location brand space? What advice would you give to junior marketers who are trying to come up and want to, like, hey, I want to be like Doug? What
Why?
would you?
Don't. My advice would really be for them is to think about, and again, shameless plug, but I talk about kind of how I build high performing teams in the book. I have a very simple formula for how I build a high performing team. I hire for passion, I require purpose, and I celebrate progress. So I'm hiring you, especially at a junior level, for your will first, your skill second. Because I can teach you a skill. I can't teach you to be that self-starter, that high energy, going to get it done, going to do the right thing when nobody's looking person. I require purpose and that, look, we work to live, we don't live to work. And so when somebody's coming into the office every day, they've got to make a difference as a person. Forget what their title is. And so how do you go about your day with intent? How do you go about the way you work with intent? And then it's about understanding that in marketing, especially, there is no such thing as perfection. If your goal is a +5 and you hit a +3, why focus on the fact that you missed goal by 2 percentage points? Focus on the fact that you were +3. Like, why not? So, there is a beauty in celebrating improvement. Because that'll then allows you to dig in and say, all right, guys, we did really well versus a year ago, but we didn't hit target. What are we missing?
Yeah. And maybe lastly here, so in brands that are working with multiple partners and vendors, and they've got like call it partner creep or vendor creep, and what advice do you have where like they've got so many and there's so much out, like what advice do you have for brands for how to, utilize strategic experts and really help level up some of their, key metrics and key
Mm.
results?
First thing is practice the notion of humility. Marketers have to be arrogant and humble at the same time. Arrogant because the purpose of marketing is to motivate a consumer to do what you would like them to do when you want them to do it. That is an arrogant undertaking. But you have to be humble and recognize the skills that you don't have, not only in how you build a team, but how you bring in external people. So have the humility to recognize what you're good at and what you're not. That's one. Two, this is not about acquiring a all-star roster of free agents. This is about finding a very narrow set of partners that you can trust. And personally, I think one of the worst things to happen to the agency model is the bifurcation or trifurcation of, this company does creative and strategy, this company does media, this per company does only digital media. I like having it all under one roof, because then you have a single point of accountability. And even if the expertise is 80 to 85% of what you could get from a specialist, there's something to be said for creating evangelists who work on your team that understand your business soup to nuts.
That's why you loved partnering with Ballyhoo, right? Global leader.
Yeah.
Local
I mean,
market.
you guys in the time that I worked with you played a critical role in the success of our business at Pearl. When I joined the company 12 years ago, the brand was a discount-driven brand. It was living through buy one, get one, and was fortunate to lead the transformation to become best in class within the category, top 7% of all franchise brands around the world, and really driving sustained profitability through patient growth. All while really leaning hard into an elevated aesthetic of both product and service and culture.
Love partnering with you, Doug, and appreciate
Thanks,
the
man.
kind words. So just before we hop off, 2025 Super Bowl, is this going to be the year of the Giants, or what do you think is going to happen?
I would say that
Or
for
24?
New York fans, we'd like to see a playoff run. I think we have been beaten down a bit to lower our expectations last year, not this recent year, but the year before. We were pleasantly surprised with the playoff run. I think now, third year of the Daboll administration, I think we're looking for a playoff run. We don't have to win the conference, but we got to be competitive. We shouldn't be looking to shop free agents out of shop our talent out of the team week 5. And I think we have potential. There's a couple missing pieces, but I'm more optimistic about the Giants than I am about the Yankees.
Oh, me too. Me too. All right. Well, I just want to thank you again, Doug Zarkin, for being here with us, author of Moving Your Brand Out of the Friend Zone and Chief Brand Officer of Good Feet Worldwide, and a good friend. I'm Zack Dugow, founder and CEO of Insticator OKO Ballyhoo. Really appreciate the time, and to see you soon. And if Giants make it to the Super Bowl, Doug, you and I are going. I'm getting a stick.
All right. That'd be awesome. Great
All
to see
right.
you again.
Thanks a lot, Doug. Take care.
You got it. Bye-bye.